A family of 9 that fled Gloriavale says the Christian community tried to separate their family to stop them from leaving. Mr and Mrs Ben-Canaan, who only want to be known by their last names, were born and raised in the community for almost 37 years. Mr Ben-Canaan was thrown out of the community 2 months ago, and his wife and 7 children joined him later. For the first time, Mrs Ben-Canaan has opened up about the harrowing ordeal. She spoke exclusively to our Christchurch reporter, Nicholas Pointon.
It has been 5 weeks since Mrs Ben-Canaan walked away from the only life she knew. Her husband was excommunicated from the community 4 weeks earlier. Gloriavale leaders discovered he was operating a private bank and trade me account and gave him no choice but to leave. No one is above the collective. After her husband was sent away, Mrs Ben-Canaan came under tremendous pressure.
There is a decided path that you're supposed to choose if your husband is sent away. You're to decide that you don't see him again and that's the end of your marriage and you live alone for the rest of your life.
Being apart from her husband was the hardest thing she has ever had to do. When he came to visit her and their 7 children, she was manipulated and told that seeing him was against the word of God.
In the 4.5 weeks that I was separated from it was very, very traumatic. He came to visit one Saturday and I was told that I wasn't allowed to see him or I'd be breaking my commitment, I'd be breaking the word of God. But then they turned around and said, well, we can't tell you what to do, you have to decide this for yourself. And I said, but you've just told me that you don't want me to, and you've just told me that you know what you're telling me is breaking the law, but you are putting pressure on me to go your way and say it's my own choice that I'm deciding not to see my husband. But it's your choice. You're trying to push your choice onto me. I do want to see him. So they'd have another conversation around again. Well, you can go and see him. And it's your choice, and we can't stop you because it's against the law. But if you do, you are not to be allowed to live here anymore, and you can't come back. And as far as I understood then, that meant damnation, that meant I'd lost my soul and I was going to hell. And that wasn't something that I wanted to choose.
Mrs Ben-Canaan spoke of the physical pain she felt.
When that person is taken away from you, that person that you love so much, and that it's actually a physical pain, you feel physically ripped from your heart, you feel like you're bleeding out your heart. And the other wives who are still suffering that now, we had talks because they had that same physical pain. It's not only mental, emotional stress, it's actually a physical pain that people can't understand. Unless it happens to you, you can't understand. I had compassion and empathy for the other women whose husbands had been sent away. But I really didn't know what they were feeling until it happened to me myself.
The separation of family members who are defecting from the status quo in Gloriavale is a strategy used to alienate those who have been kicked out. Former Gloriavale member Tim Hartnell left the commune 34 years ago. He stressed there were good people in Gloriavale, but says splitting families is a tactic to stop a whole family from leaving.
It's a strategy that they've used for many, many years, and I believe the separating of families is wrong.
At first, the technique did not work. Mrs Ben-Canaan could not bear to be away from her husband any longer. She decided to leave with him and her 7 children. However, the pull and the control Gloriavale had over her life was too great. She returned to the West Coast community within 24 hours with 4 of her children.
I was terrified. I was completely convinced that I was going to hell. And then I had to be on the property at Gloriavale to be saved.
But her return was met with consequences. She was stripped of all previous responsibilities and was no longer allowed to work as a teacher.
It was their way of saying, you've been put down. You are in rejection. We are rejecting you because of what you have done. You have created a precedent and you don't do this. If your husband's sent away, you stay here.
Soon though, Mrs Ben-Canaan could not bear it anymore. The wives of other men who had been kicked out were living reflections of the person she did not want to become.
That's what I'm going to end up, a crippled person who doesn't even know my own mind, because they're so twisted in what they say. They twist what you say, they twist so many things that you don't really know what's on the level anymore. I just thought, I'm next. That is what I'm going to end up like if I stay here. And I thought, no, I want to be alive. I want to be fully alive. I'm alive and I'm going to be alive. I'm going to dare to live. And so I rang up and I told him to come pick me up.
So a plan was set. Mr Ben-Canaan would arrive at Gloriavale at 8 p.m. on a Friday night in early July. They were careful to make sure it was an evening where everybody would be at a compulsory film in the commune's hall. Regardless, Mrs Ben-Canaan's heart was racing. She'd packed their bags, got the children ready, and had tried to pin her door shut. Then she heard a knock at the window.
Coincidentally, it was the exact same 14th years of the anniversary my husband had asked me to marry him. And so when he knocked on the window and opened the window, he said, "Will you marry me?" And it was so beautiful.
The family has been united and have been living together in Rolleston for the past 4 weeks. Like her husband, Mrs Ben-Canaan has no desire to go back to Gloriavale. Her priority now is finding a suitable home in Rolleston and finding a job for her husband. Gloriavale declined to comment on these allegations and the circumstances surrounding the Ben-Canaan's departure. For Checkpoint, Nicholas Pointon.